Okay, seriously though. Have you ever, like, completely lost it over something ridiculously small?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Like, what's the silliest thing?
I think my most recent one was I was trying to make this recipe,
Uh-huh.
and I had all the ingredients except I was out of like one key spice.
Oh, no.
And I just I don't know, I just had a moment where I was like, ooh, this is so frustrating.
Yeah.
The whole dish is ruined.
It's the end of the world.
Yeah, it's the end of the world because I don't have this one spice.
But then you realize, like, in the grand scheme of things,
Yeah.
it's just a spice.
Exactly.
So how do we, like, we all have these moments where we kind of lose it over these tiny things.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we deal with anger when it's like a genuinely tough situation?
Right.
Like, how do we not become like rage monsters?
Well, that's what's so interesting about this Roman philosopher Seneca.
Okay.
He lived through some pretty crazy times like exile and a really difficult emperor.
Not just like the average everyday annoyances.
No, like real serious stuff. But he wrote a lot about managing anger.
Mm.
And his insights are like surprisingly relevant even today.
So, like, what's the gist? What did he say about dealing with anger?
Well, one of his main points is that we get angry because we have all these unrealistic expectations.
Okay.
We think life should be easy and predictable,
Uh-huh.
and then we freak out when things inevitably go wrong.
So it's like we're setting ourselves up for disappointment by expecting everything to be perfect.
Exactly.
Like we have this fantasy that the universe is going to cater to our every whim, and then when it doesn't, we feel like betrayed or something.
Yeah, it's like we feel entitled to have things go our way.
That's interesting.
And that sense of entitlement, that's a huge fuel for anger.
So then are we supposed to just like expect the worst all the time?
No, not at all.
Okay.
It's not about being pessimistic. It's about being realistic.
Okay.
It's about acknowledging that challenges are going to happen and being prepared to deal with them without losing your cool.
So it's like packing a mental first aid kit for life's little disasters.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, but how do we actually do that?
Well, Seneca talks a lot about broadening our perspective.
Okay.
He says we often get angry about things that ultimately don't even matter.
Like what kind of things?
Well, imagine complaining about slow Wi-Fi back when people didn't even have indoor plumbing.
Right, good point.
So it's about asking yourself, will this even matter in a week, a year?
That's a good reality check.
Yeah, and if it won't, then why waste your energy getting all worked up about it?
I guess it's easy to lose sight of the bigger picture when we're in the middle of some minor annoyance.
Exactly. And sometimes we just need to step back and laugh at the absurdity of it all.
Turn that frown upside down.
Right, because often our reactions make things way worse than they actually are.
I'm all for laughing more. But what about when the anger feels less like a chuckle-worthy mishap and more like a freight train? Like that feeling when your blood pressure spikes and you're about to unleash a verbal torrent.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
And in those moments, Seneca says the most important thing is to hit the pause button.
Before you react.
Exactly.
Which is way easier said than done right.
It is tough because anger can feel kind of good in the moment.
Yeah, there's that rush of adrenaline, like a sense of righteousness.
Yeah, like you're the hero in your own action movie.
But then it's like sending an angry email and instantly regretting it.
Oh, yeah, we've all been there.
Abort mission.
But the problem is, once we give in to that initial anger, it's so much harder to get back in control.
So how do we actually hit that pause button when our emotions are running hot?
Seneca's advice is to delay.
Delay.
Yeah, tell yourself, I can always get angry later, but give yourself some time to cool down first.
So you're saying like ride the wave, but don't let it crash on you.
Exactly, because a lot of times that urge to just explode will pass on its own.
Or at least you'll be able to see things more clearly.
Right.
So it's not about suppressing the anger, but more about choosing how to respond.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we have more control than we think.
I love that because anger rarely actually solves the problem. It usually just makes it worse.
It's like throwing gasoline on a fire.
Yeah, you're just creating a bigger mess.
Right. So delaying is about choosing a wiser, more skillful way of responding.
Okay, this is super helpful.
Yeah.
But what about when the anger isn't about our own expectations or reactions?
Yeah.
What about when it's triggered by someone else's actions?
You mean like when someone does something that just pushes your buttons?
Exactly, because we can't control other people no matter how hard we try.
Right, and this is where Seneca's wisdom is so powerful.
Okay, tell me more.
He reminds us that we're all flawed human beings.
Okay.
We all make mistakes. We all behave badly sometimes.
So we shouldn't be surprised when people act human.
Exactly. And he encourages us to see our own imperfections in the actions of others.
How do we do that?
He has this amazing phrase, "I've done this myself also."
Wow, that is so profound.
It's about cultivating empathy and understanding. Instead of getting all self-righteous and indignant,
Yeah.
we remember that we're not so different from the people who annoy us.
Like we've all been inconsiderate or selfish or just plain clueless at some point.
Right.
It's like that saying, let he who is without sin cast the first stone.
Yeah, it's about acknowledging that we're all in this messy human experience together.
And that we're all capable of making those same mistakes that make us so angry when other people make them.
Exactly.
Okay, so recognizing our own flaws can actually help us manage anger towards others.
It's a game changer.
This is blowing my mind.
Because it shifts the focus from blame and judgment to understanding and compassion.
Okay, so Seneca's saying, instead of getting angry at someone for cutting us off in traffic,
Right.
we should remember that time we accidentally cut someone off.
And maybe even feel a little bit of sympathy for them?
Wow, that is a radical way of thinking.
It is, but it's incredibly freeing.
So this is like next level anger management.
It's about recognizing that holding on to anger ultimately hurts us more than anyone else. It poisons our inner world and prevents us from experiencing genuine connection with others.
This is so powerful.
Really is.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how Seneca's philosophy isn't just about taming temper tantrums.
Right.
It's about cultivating a more compassionate and understanding way of being in the world.
Exactly. It's about choosing kindness over judgment, grace over resentment.
It's about recognizing that we're all in this together, flawed and fabulous.
That's a great way to put it.
This has been so insightful, but there's so much more to unpack here.
There is.
We've only just scratched the surface of Seneca's wisdom.
Yeah.
So stay tuned because we'll be right back to continue our exploration of his secrets for taming the temper tantrum.
And creating a more peaceful and compassionate life. So before the break, we were talking about hitting that pause button when anger starts to rise.
Right, like don't let your emotions hijack the situation.
Exactly. And I know it's easier said than done.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But that's why Seneca really emphasized recognizing anger in its early stages.
Okay.
Like before it becomes this huge explosion.
So what are some signs we can look for?
Well, think about physical sensations.
Yeah, okay.
Like, is your jaw clenched?
Mm-hmm.
Are you breathing faster? Is your heart racing?
Yeah. I can see how those would be red flags.
Yeah, it's like your body's giving you a heads up.
Like a warning signal.
Right.
Hey, pay attention. Something's about to go down.
Exactly. And the sooner we notice those signs, the more time we have to choose a different response.
Instead of just like reacting impulsively.
Right. It's about being proactive instead of reactive.
Okay, so we're basically intercepting those physical cues before they turn into a full-blown meltdown.
Exactly.
It's like we're becoming more aware of our inner landscape,
Right.
those subtle shifts in our emotional state.
Yeah, it's like learning to forecast your own personal emotional weather patterns.
I love that analogy.
Because if you know a storm's coming,
Mm-hmm.
you can take shelter before you get drenched.
Right, preparation is key.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important aspect of Seneca's philosophy.
Okay, what's that?
He talked a lot about the role of our thoughts in shaping our emotions.
Our thoughts. How do those play into anger?
Well, Seneca believed that our emotions aren't just automatic reactions to external events.
Okay.
They're actually shaped by our interpretations of those events.
So it's not just what happens to us.
Right.
It's how we think about what happens to us.
Exactly. It's the story we tell ourselves about the situation.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me an example.
Let's say someone cuts you off in traffic.
Oh, the classic.
You could interpret that as a personal attack.
Yeah, like they did it on purpose to annoy me.
Right, and that would fuel your anger.
Road rage activated.
But what if you chose to see it differently?
How so?
What if you considered that maybe they're just having a bad day? Maybe they're rushing to the hospital or something.
That's a whole different perspective.
Right, and that shift in perspective can completely change your emotional experience.
Instead of feeling angry, you might feel compassion.
Exactly.
So it's not about denying reality, but about choosing a more empowering interpretation.
Right.
A story that doesn't automatically trigger those negative emotions.
Exactly. Seneca believed that we have a choice in how we frame our experiences.
And that choice directly impacts our emotional well-being.
It's powerful stuff.
It really is. It's like we have the ability to rewrite the script of our own emotional dramas.
Exactly. We become the authors of our own emotional experiences.
Okay, this is mind-blowing, but I'm curious.
Yeah.
How do Seneca's ideas apply to situations where the anger is triggered by someone else's actions?
You mean like when someone does something that just pushes your buttons?
Exactly.
It's a great question because we can't control what other people do.
Right, no matter how hard we try.
And that's where Seneca's wisdom is so profound.
Okay.
He reminds us that we're all flawed human beings.
Okay.
We all make mistakes. We all behave badly sometimes.
So we shouldn't be surprised when people act human.
Exactly. And he encourages us to see our own imperfections in the actions of others.
Mm-hmm.
How do we do that?
He has this amazing phrase, "I've done this myself also."
Wow, that is so profound.
It's about cultivating empathy and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of getting all self-righteous and indignant,
Yeah.
we remember that we're not so different from the people who annoy us.
Like, we've all been inconsiderate or selfish or just plain clueless at some point.
Right.
It's like that saying, let he who is without sin cast the first stone.
Yeah, it's about acknowledging that we're all in this messy human experience together.
And that we're all capable of making the same mistakes that make us so angry when other people make them.
Exactly.
Okay, so recognizing our own flaws can actually help us manage anger towards others.
It's a game changer.
This is blowing my mind.
Because it shifts the focus from blame and judgment to understanding and compassion.
Okay, so Seneca's saying instead of getting angry at someone for cutting us off in traffic,
Right.
we should remember that time we accidentally cut someone off and maybe even feel a little bit of sympathy for them.
Yeah, that is a radical way of thinking.
It is, but it's incredibly freeing.
So this is like next level anger management.
It's about recognizing that holding on to anger ultimately hurts us more than anyone else. It poisons our inner world and prevents us from experiencing genuine connection with others.
This is so powerful.
It really is.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how Seneca's philosophy isn't just about taming temper tantrums.
You're right.
It's about cultivating a more compassionate and understanding way of being in the world.
Exactly. It's about choosing kindness over judgment, grace over resentment.
It's about recognizing that we're all in this together, flawed and fabulous.
That's a great way to put it.
This has been so insightful, but there's so much more to unpack here.
Here it is.
We've only just scratched the surface of Seneca's wisdom.
We have.
So stay tuned, because we'll be right back to continue our exploration of his secrets for taming the temper tantrum.
And creating a more peaceful and compassionate life.
So we've been talking about how to deal with anger when it feels like a freight train. Like those moments when you're ready to just explode.
Yeah, those were tough.
But Seneca has some really interesting advice for those situations too.
He does.
And it all comes back to that idea of perspective.
Right, remembering what really matters.
Because sometimes we get so caught up in the moment that we lose sight of the bigger picture.
Exactly. And Seneca would say, that's when we need to zoom out.
Zoom out.
Yeah, like literally imagine yourself zooming out from the situation.
Okay, I can see that.
So you're no longer just focused on that one annoying thing. You're seeing it in the context of your whole life.
And all the other things that are going on.
Right. And suddenly that one thing might not seem so important anymore.
It's like a reality check.
Exactly.
Okay, so zooming out helps us gain perspective.
Yeah, and it also gives us some space to choose a different response.
Instead of just reacting impulsively.
Right. It's about taking back control.
Because we're not just victims of our emotions.
We have the power to choose how we respond.
And that choice is everything.
It really is.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how Seneca's philosophy isn't just about managing anger.
Right.
It's about living a more intentional and fulfilling life.
It is about recognizing that we have a choice in how we experience the world.
And that choice is ultimately up to us.
It is, and that's an incredibly empowering realization.
It really is.
Because it means that we're not at the mercy of our circumstances or other people's actions.
We have the power to create our own inner peace.
And that inner peace is the foundation for everything else.
It's true, because when we're not constantly reacting to everything that annoys us, we have so much more energy and attention to focus on the things that truly matter.
Exactly, like our relationships, our passions, our purpose.
This has been such a fascinating exploration of Seneca's wisdom.
It has been a pleasure.
And I think the biggest takeaway for me is that anger doesn't have to control us.
I agree.
We can choose to respond differently.
With more wisdom, more compassion, more grace.
Exactly. And by making that choice, we not only create a more peaceful life for ourselves,
but we also contribute to a more peaceful world.
Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of anger.
It's been a joy.
And remember, the next time you feel that anger rising, take a deep breath, zoom out.
And choose the path of wisdom.
Until next time, may you find peace and understanding in all that you do.